You still trust minds that leak weakness. Loyalty blinds you, empathy enslaves you, and predictability marks you for elimination. 3 patterns expose the predators studying you. You were taught to evaluate people by surface indicators, intelligence, education, articulation, shared values. You assume that a sharp mind equals a stable one. That assumption is your first weakness. Mental instability rarely looks like madness. It looks like charisma. It looks like intensity. It looks like someone who thinks deeply. You mistake stimulation for strength. You confuse complexity with control. The most dangerous minds are not irrational. They are selectively rational. Precise when it benefits them. Foggy when it incriminates them. Focused when gaining leverage. Chaotic when avoiding accountability. You trust consistency of talent. You trust consistency of conversation. You trust consistency of affection. But consistency of output is not consistency of character. A brilliant strategist can still be internally fragmented. A calm voice can still conceal predatory calculation. Understand this. Stability is not about intelligence. It is about alignment. When thoughts, emotions, and actions align under pressure, you are dealing with a stable structure. When alignment collapses under stress, you are dealing with volatility disguised as depth. Pressure reveals architecture. You must begin watching how a person behaves when they lose status. They are contradicted publicly. They do not get their way. They sense abandonment. They face consequences. A stable mind tightens discipline under pressure. An unstable mind leaks. And the leak is subtle. It might be passive aggression, a delayed punishment disguised as coincidence, a subtle withdrawal of warmth, a sudden reinterpretation of events, a calculated silence meant to provoke pursuit. Instability is rarely explosive at first. It is incremental. It tests your tolerance threshold. It studies how much distortion you will absorb before objecting. Here is the trap. You interpret small distortions as normal human imperfection. You excuse inconsistencies as stress. You justify red flags as trauma. You compensate for their instability with your own stability. That is how dependency begins. The unstable mind creates micro-crises. Then you become the stabilizer. You regulate their moods. You manage their reactions. You anticipate triggers. You shrink yourself to maintain peace. You think you are being mature. You are being conditioned. The illusion of mental stability works because unstable individuals can mimic order when it suits them. They can be hyper-focused, disciplined, even visionary when pursuing advantage. But when their ego is threatened, the mask fractures. Watch the fracture points. Do they reinterpret conversations to preserve superiority? Do they escalate minor issues into moral indictments? Do they shift blame with surgical precision? Do they demand emotional reactions while withholding their own accountability? A stable mind does not fear disagreement. It does not panic at loss of control. It does not rewrite reality to protect its image. An unstable mind cannot tolerate internal insecurity, so it exports it. It injects doubt into you. It destabilizes the environment so it doesn't have to confront itself. You must detach from charm, detach from intellectual admiration, detach from shared ideology. None of these guarantee internal order. You are not evaluating how impressive someone is. You are evaluating how dangerous they become when denied. There is a difference. You must train yourself to observe without being flattered, to question without being intimidated, to withhold dependence until alignment is proven under strain. Because once you depend on a fractured mind, you inherit its fractures, and fractured structures collapse without warning. This chapter is not about paranoia, it is about calibration. You are not seeking perfection, you are seeking predictability under pressure. You are seeking congruence between words and reactions. You are seeking a mind that does not mutate when ego is threatened. From this point forward, you stop asking, are they intelligent? You ask, are they structurally sound? If you fail to make this distinction, you will tie your stability to someone who cannot maintain their own. And when they fall apart, they will make sure you fall first. You still think emotional instability is weakness. It is not. In the wrong hands, it is leverage. Volatile emotion, when uncontrolled, is chaos, but when selectively deployed, it becomes a behavioral conditioning tool. It destabilizes others while preserving the aggressor's position. The volatile mind does not merely lose control, it studies reactions. It calibrates intensity. It learns what makes you retreat. Understand the mechanism. Humans crave predictability. The nervous system relaxes around stable patterns. When someone alternates between warmth and hostility, approval and withdrawal, affection and cold indifference, your system goes into hypervigilance. You begin scanning. What did I do? How do I get back to the good version of them? Why did the tone shift? That question loop is the trap. Volatility creates psychological suspense. Suspense creates attachment. You become invested in restoring equilibrium. You start negotiating with moods. You adjust your tone, your timing, your boundaries. You attempt to engineer safety. Meanwhile, the volatile individual learns your pressure points. Notice the pattern. They praise you intensely, then they withdraw. They criticize sharply, then they soften just enough to keep you engaged. This is not emotional immaturity. This is intermittent reinforcement, the same mechanism used in gambling addiction. Unpredictable rewards create stronger dependency than consistent ones. When approval is stable, you relax. When approval is unpredictable, you chase. Volatile minds weaponize this. Under stress, they escalate. They overreact to minor friction. They frame disagreement as betrayal. They demand emotional reactions while withholding their own accountability. The explosion is rarely about the event. It is about control. An emotional spike forces attention. It shifts the environment. It compels you to respond. It forces you into defense mode. And defense mode is submission. While you explain, justify, calm, and repair, they regain psychological altitude. They are no longer accountable. You are. You must observe the ratio. How often do they destabilize the room when contradicted? How often do they punish distance with exaggerated reactions? How often does their intensity increase precisely when they are losing influence? Volatility serves three strategic functions. Testing loyalty. Will you tolerate emotional turbulence to stay connected? Establishing dominance. Can they control the emotional temperature of the room? Creating dependency. Will you work to earn stability from them? Most men fall into the stabilizer role. You believe your calmness gives you power. In reality, it can trap you. The more grounded you are, the more you compensate for someone unstable. You become the emotional shock absorber. Shock absorbers wear out. The volatile mind thrives on reaction. Silence unsettles them. Indifference destabilizes them. But when you engage emotionally, even to defend yourself, you feed the cycle. Here is the darker layer. Some volatile individuals are not consciously manipulative. They are simply internally fractured. But whether intentional or instinctive, the effect is the same. You orbit their emotional gravity. They don't need to plan it. The pattern itself is enough. The moment you begin anticipating someone's mood before entering a room, you have surrendered ground. The moment you edit your truth to avoid triggering intensity, you have traded sovereignty for temporary peace. Volatility creates an unstable hierarchy. You never know where you stand. That uncertainty gives them psychological superiority. They dictate emotional terms. You comply.
Volatility shakes your nervous system. Narrative manipulation reshapes your reality. This pattern is quieter, more sophisticated. It does not raise its voice. It adjusts the story. A mind that exhibits selective memory does not forget randomly. It forgets strategically. Details that weaken its position dissolve. Details that elevate its virtue remain sharp. Over time, the shared past becomes negotiable terrain. You begin arguing about what happened, not what it meant, what happened. That is the first fracture. A stable mind may misremember, but when corrected, it recalibrates. An unstable, manipulative mind resists recalibration. It reframes, it pivots, it introduces new context that subtly reassigns blame. You say, "You agreed to this." They respond, "That's not what I meant." You present evidence. They reply, "You misunderstood my tone." The facts are not denied directly, they are diluted. Narrative manipulators understand something fundamental. Control the interpretation, and you control the hierarchy. If they can redefine events, they can redefine responsibility. This pattern operates through three primary tactics. 1. Repositioning intent. When confronted, they reinterpret their original intent as noble or misunderstood. Harm becomes miscommunication. Betrayal becomes self-protection. Withdrawal becomes space for clarity. The action remains the same. The moral framing shifts. 2. Micro-gaslighting. Not dramatic denial, subtle erosion. "That's not what I said. You're overthinking. You're too sensitive." Each statement plants doubt, not enough to explode the relationship, just enough to destabilize your perception of confidence. You begin replaying conversations alone. You question your memory. You soften your accusations before speaking them. That hesitation is power transferred. 3. Strategic amnesia under accountability. When accountability approaches, memory fog appears. Specific promises vanish. Exact phrasing becomes unclear. Yet when leverage is available, their recall is surgical. They remember your mistakes from months ago. They remember your tone, your hesitation, your one moment of weakness. Selective memory is not confusion, it is filtration. Here is why this pattern is dangerous. Humans bond through shared narrative. Relationships are built on what we experienced together. When that narrative becomes unstable, the foundation erodes. You begin negotiating reality. Instead of holding ground, you start proving ground. You bring screenshots, you re-explain timelines, you defend your interpretation like a lawyer. Meanwhile, they remain calm, detached, slightly disappointed in your overreaction. Calmness does not equal innocence. A manipulative narrator understands composure is persuasive. If they remain steady while you grow frustrated, observers unconsciously assign credibility to them. You lose twice, first in private, then socially. This pattern is especially lethal when combined with intelligence. A sharp mind can rationalize any contradiction. It can build philosophical scaffolding around selfish behavior. It can turn betrayal into evolution. You must watch for repetition. Does every conflict end with you apologizing, even when you initiated the confrontation with evidence? Does accountability consistently morph into mutual fault? Do their mistakes dissolve while yours crystallize? When a mind edits history to protect ego, you are not in dialogue, you are in revision, and revision always favors the editor. The deeper danger is internal corrosion. If you stay exposed to narrative distortion long enough, your internal compass weakens. You become hesitant in decisions, you second-guess instincts, you outsource judgment. That is the objective outcome, whether intentional or not. A sovereign man cannot afford unstable reality. Strategy requires clarity. Alliances require reliability of memory. Trust requires congruence between past and present. When someone treats truth as elastic, you are standing on shifting sand. From this point forward, observe how someone handles correction. Do they integrate it, or do they reconstruct the past to survive it? Never depend on a mind that negotiates reality, because once truth becomes flexible, loyalty becomes optional. You fear open enemies. You should fear conditional allies. Conditional loyalty does not announce itself. It mimics devotion. It mirrors your values. It stands beside you when alignment is profitable. But the moment cost outweighs benefit, its spine dissolves. This pattern is not emotional, it is transactional. The opportunistic mind asks one silent question in every interaction: what do I gain from this position? When gain exists, support appears. When gain disappears, support recalibrates. The shift is subtle at first: delayed responses, reduced enthusiasm, strategic neutrality. You sense it before you can prove it. Conditional loyalty is built on convenience, not conviction, and convenience collapses under pressure. Observe what happens when association with you becomes risky, when your status dips, when public opinion turns, when you enforce a boundary that limits their advantage. Do they tighten ranks or widen distance? Opportunistic alignment thrives in a rising environment. It celebrates momentum. It amplifies your victories. It publicly affiliates when your name carries weight, but it is absent in sacrifice. History is saturated with this pattern. Courts, corporations, war councils, men surrounded by allies until defeat loomed. Then those same allies defected, reframed their allegiance, or claimed neutrality, because their loyalty was never to the person, it was to the trajectory. The opportunistic mind studies power currents. It attaches to perceived upward movement. It detaches from stagnation. It can praise you in private while positioning itself for your replacement in public. This is not always conscious betrayal. Sometimes it's instinct. Humans orient toward survival, but instinct does not excuse exposure. Dependence on conditional loyalty creates strategic blindness. You assume reinforcement where none exists. You build plans assuming backup. You speak freely assuming discretion. Then pressure arrives, and silence follows. Or worse, alignment shifts. The most dangerous variation of this pattern is moral flexibility. The opportunistic mind adjusts its principles to match advantage. Yesterday, it defended your decision. Today, it critiques it with equal conviction. It will claim growth. It will claim new information. It will claim perspective. What it will not claim is self-interest. Watch how quickly someone adopts the dominant opinion in a room. Watch how their convictions fluctuate depending on who is present. Watch how they reposition language when the power center changes. That is alignment scanning. Conditional loyalty also tests you. It withholds full commitment until you prove benefit. It may give partial support, waiting to see if you succeed before fully attaching. It invests minimally, maximizing optionality. Optionality is safety for them, but for you, it's exposure. A sovereign alliance requires shared risk, shared cost, shared accountability. When one side maintains exit strategies at all times, the structure is asymmetrical. They are free, you are invested. Never confuse proximity with allegiance. Never confuse enthusiasm with commitment. True loyalty is expensive. It costs reputation. It costs comfort. It costs opportunity. If someone's support never costs them anything, it is not loyalty. It is positioning. And positioning changes with wind direction. The final test is pressure applied to them because of you. Do they absorb it, or do they distance themselves to preserve image? A mind that aligns only under favorable conditions will abandon you at the first sign of fallout. And when they leave, they will not call it betrayal. They will call it evolution. From this point forward, you measure loyalty not by words, not by praise, not by shared ideology, but by cost endured. If no cost has been endured, no loyalty has been proven. Never depend on a mind whose allegiance is conditional, because when survival demands sacrifice, it will sacrifice you.
You have identified the patterns. Now you remove yourself from their reach. This is not emotional withdrawal. This is strategic detachment. When you recognize volatility, narrative manipulation, or conditional loyalty, your first instinct will be confrontation. You will want clarity, confession, resolution. That instinct is naive. Predatory patterns do not dissolve under exposure, they adapt. Your power does not come from arguing, it comes from repositioning. The first countermeasure is emotional neutrality. Volatile individuals feed on reaction. Deny it. When intensity spikes, lower your tone. When accusations rise, shorten your sentences. When they attempt to escalate, refuse acceleration. You are not calming them, you are refusing participation. Silence, delivered without resentment, destabilizes volatile strategy. If there is no emotional friction, there is no leverage. The second countermeasure is controlled information flow. Narrative manipulators weaponize detail, so you reduce access. You do not overshare plans. You do not reveal insecurities casually. You do not narrate your entire internal process. Information is structural support. Remove it, and manipulation weakens. Speak less than you know. Confirm less than they expect. Reveal selectively. A sovereign mind does not leak its blueprint. The third countermeasure is pressure testing. Conditional loyalty reveals itself under cost, so you introduce calibrated pressure. Not chaos, not drama, measured resistance. Disagree publicly once. Enforce a boundary calmly. Delay availability. Withdraw automatic validation. Then observe. Do they remain steady? Or does tone shift? Does distance grow? Does narrative begin adjusting? Pressure exposes architecture. The fourth countermeasure is non-attachment to outcome. If you are afraid to lose them, you have already surrendered leverage. Dependence makes you tolerable to exploitation. The moment someone senses you cannot walk away, their incentives change. Volatility increases. Narrative distortion intensifies. Loyalty becomes optional. So you cultivate internal independence. You prepare mentally for exit before conflict begins, not dramatically, quietly. You accept that losing unstable alliances is strategic pruning, not tragedy. This is where most men fail. You mistake endurance for strength. You tolerate instability because you believe loyalty requires suffering. No. Loyalty requires discernment.
You are not obligated to stabilize someone who refuses self-regulation. You are not obligated to argue with someone who edits reality. You are not obligated to chase someone who aligns conditionally. Detachment is not bitterness, it is insulation. The fifth countermeasure is calibrated unpredictability, not emotional volatility, strategic opacity. Unstable minds seek control through predictability. If they can anticipate your reactions, they can engineer them. So you reduce reaction patterns. You do not always defend. You do not always respond instantly. You do not always clarify. Sometimes you observe. Sometimes you delay. Sometimes you disengage entirely. Your behavior becomes measured, not mechanical. This forces recalculation. When manipulators cannot map you, they lose efficiency. But understand this clearly. These countermeasures are not designed to fix them. They are designed to protect you. If patterns persist despite neutrality, reduced access, and pressure testing, you do not escalate. You exit, quietly, cleanly, without performance. You do not announce your departure with speeches. You do not attempt to teach lessons. You simply remove dependency. The most powerful move against instability is refusal to orbit it. Your goal is not dominance, it is sovereignty. A sovereign man chooses association. He does not cling to it. He evaluates structures like a strategist evaluating fortifications. If the walls crack under strain, he does not decorate them. He relocates. Remember this. Patterns repeat. People rarely transform without crisis-level consequence. If you continue tolerating distortions, you become the reason they persist. Detachment forces exposure. Either they stabilize in response to loss of leverage, or they reveal their core when control slips. Both outcomes benefit you. From this point forward, you stop trying to win unstable games. You stop defending truth to someone committed to rewriting it. You stop proving loyalty to someone measuring advantage. You recalibrate your associations like assets in a portfolio. Remove high-risk structures. Reinforce stable ones. Never over-invest emotionally without verified alignment. Strategic detachment is not coldness, it is survival. And survival is the foundation of power. Now the final shift. You cannot merely defend against unstable minds. You must outgrow the version of yourself that was available to them. Dependence is not accidental. It reveals identity structure. Somewhere inside you there was a need, validation, belonging, admiration, emotional intensity. That need created tolerance. Tolerance created exposure. If you still crave approval, you will always rationalize volatility. If you still fear isolation, you will always excuse conditional loyalty. If you still need to be understood, you will argue with narrative manipulators. Sovereignty begins where emotional hunger ends. This chapter is not about becoming antisocial. It is about becoming selective. You stop measuring your worth by who stays. You measure it by what you allow. Most men build identity through attachment. Who they date, who they work with, who praises them. Their self-concept is co-authored by unstable people. That is weakness. A sovereign identity is internally authored. It does not fluctuate with external perception. It does not collapse when someone withdraws approval. It does not chase restoration when dynamics shift. To reach that state, Something must die. The agreeable version of you, the over-explaining version, the stabilizer, the fixer, the one who absorbs emotional chaos to preserve connection. That version was trained for harmony, not for power. And harmony without discernment breeds exploitation. Selective association means you evaluate people by structure, not charisma, by pressure response, not promises, by cost endured, not words spoken. You slow down attachment. You do not grant full access quickly. You do not confuse chemistry with compatibility. You do not reward intensity with trust. Trust becomes earned through time and stress. You also accept something most avoid: fewer alliances. When you raise standards for psychological stability, your circle contracts. That contraction will test you. Silence will increase. Validation will decrease. Good. Scarcity of access increases value, including your own. A sovereign man does not need constant interaction. He does not fill space to avoid confronting himself. He is comfortable alone because he is internally ordered. Internal order eliminates desperation. Desperation is what unstable minds exploit. They sense when you need connection more than clarity. They sense when you would rather tolerate distortion than risk solitude. Remove desperation and their leverage collapses. Selective association also demands discipline in admiration. You do not idolize intelligence. You do not romanticize trauma. You do not excuse brilliance paired with instability. Talent without regulation is liability. Intensity